Everyone has it in their heads that surviving a zombie apocalypse would be easy. Well, not everyone. Some people come to terms with the fact they would become a zombie on the first day of the apocalypse. Others would say that they are too out of shape to keep running, and others would probably have a complete change of personality when anarchy takes over. But for those that don't fall in those groups, they tend to think they could survive an actual zombie apocalypse. But what if the world isn't ravaged by slow-moving, stupid, corroding, alive-again dead boys and girls like what we normally see? If you think you could take the same skill sets into a universe where a single drop of infected blood turns you into a rage-fueled maniac in under 30 seconds, well, you've got another thing coming. Today, I'm not asking a question. I'm telling you why you wouldn't survive 28 Days Later's Rage virus, the Cambridge outbreak. The virus first appeared in 28 Days Later back in 2002, released from a Cambridge laboratory by well-meaning but really dumb animal rights activists who thought they were saving test chimps from cruelty. One attack from an infected primate and the activists started convulsing within 20 seconds. Blood poured from her eyes and mouth. Her body twisted into something that looked human but operated on pure, unfiltered rage. She attacked the other activists immediately, biting and clawing, spreading infected blood and saliva faster than anyone could react. Cambridge fell that night. London collapsed within days. Britain was a graveyard of screaming infected within 28 days. The military couldn't contain it because containment requires time, and this virus doesn't give you any. But here's the question nobody asked during those first 28 days. If this virus kills its host through starvation within weeks, why did scientists create something that spreads this fast? Hold on to that question, because the answer reveals why every survival strategy you know is already obsolete: the speed factor. Traditional zombie outbreaks give you breathing room to plan. Slow shufflers take hours to break down a door, days to form a meaningful horde. You can fortify, scavenge supplies, organize a defense. The rage virus rips that luxury away because infected hosts sprint at full speed the moment transformation completes. They don't lumber toward you moaning for brains. They charge like Olympic athletes high on bath salts and pure hatred, covering ground faster than most people can process danger. A single infected can run down a city block in seconds, vault over obstacles, smash through windows. Hordes move like flash floods, overwhelming entire neighborhoods before anyone realizes what's happening. You're not outrunning this. You're not outsmarting it either, because by the time you see an infected, you're already in striking range. But speed is just the symptom. What's actually happening inside the infected brain is where the real nightmare begins. And understanding this is the only way to see why 20 seconds is all it takes to end you. But speed is just the opening move. What makes the rage virus truly unbeatable is how it spreads. Traditional zombie bites take time to turn you. Hours, sometimes days of fever and decay before you reanimate. The rage virus infects in 10 to 20 seconds flat. One drop of infected blood in your eye, one scratch that breaks skin, one accidental splash of vomit across your face. That's all it takes. Your nervous system lights up like someone dumped gasoline on your brain and struck a match. The pain hits first, described by victims as burning from the inside out. Then come the convulsions, your body seizing as the virus rewrites your neurochemistry. Your prefrontal cortex shuts down completely, but it doesn't just shut down random parts of your brain. The virus targets something specific, and when you realize what it's erasing, you'll understand why infected attack with such precision. All higher reasoning, all emotional control. Everything that makes you human gets stripped away in the time it takes to tie your shoes. What's left is pure aggression with zero off switch. The symptoms are horror movie material brought to biological reality. Your eyes turn blood red from burst vessels. Your mouth froths with infected saliva. You vomit blood constantly, projectile style, which doubles as both a symptom and a transmission vector. The virus amps up your muscle tension and pain threshold, letting you push your body past normal human limits without feeling the damage. Infected have been documented running until their feet shred, climbing until their hands break, fighting until they literally collapse from organ failure. They don't stop because pain tells them to. They don't rest because their body needs it. They attack until their target is torn apart or they physically can't continue. Then they move to the next target. So if infected collapse from organ failure, that means they die eventually, right? Wrong. Because what happened in 28 weeks later proved that even death doesn't stop this virus, and the mechanism is something you'd never see coming. 28 weeks later showed what happens when you think you've won. The US military helped Britain establish a safe zone in London's District 1, complete with biometric scanning, quarantine protocols, and armed checkpoints. Thousands of refugees returned to rebuild civilization under NATO protection. It should have worked. The infected had starved after 9 weeks without food, their bodies littering the streets like failed bioweapons. But the virus had one trick nobody anticipated. And this trick answers that question from earlier about why scientists made it spread so fast. because they weren't trying to create a weapon that kills. They were trying to create something else entirely. But the virus had one trick nobody anticipated: carriers. People who contracted the virus but never showed symptoms. Their immune systems fought it to a genetic stalemate, keeping them normal while making them walking contagion bombs. The movie follows a carrier whose kiss reinfects her husband. He turns in seconds, and the whole safe zone collapses within hours. Military protocols meant nothing. Containment zones became slaughter pens. The second outbreak spread faster than the first because people had gotten complacent. But carriers raise an even bigger question. If some people can survive the virus, why can't scientists use their blood to make a cure? Keep that in mind, because the answer is buried in how this virus was actually created. The carrier mechanic is pure nightmare fuel for survival planning. You can't identify carriers by looking at them. They seem perfectly healthy, pass every medical check, show zero aggression, but their saliva and blood are loaded with active virus. One carrier in 28 weeks later infected dozens through indirect contact before anyone realized the danger. It means every survivor you meet is a potential vector. Every alliance is a gamble. Every kiss, every shared meal, every moment of human connection could be the exposure that ends you. Trust becomes suicide. Isolation becomes mandatory. And humans are social animals who go insane without connection. The virus doesn't just attack your body, it weaponizes your need for companionship against you. So isolation is the answer, right? Wrong. Because remember that question about what forced infected to evolve intelligence? The answer is isolation. Survivors isolating forced infected to adapt smarter hunting strategies, which means your best defense is what's making them stronger. Engineered nightmare. Here's where it gets worse. The Rage virus was engineered, not natural. Scientists at Cambridge Primate Research Center were developing a cure for human aggression by combining an anger inhibitor with modified Ebola genes. The goal was noble: reduce societal violence through viral vector gene therapy. But the virus mutated during testing. Instead of suppressing rage, it amplified it to murderous levels, while keeping the Ebola-style hemorrhaging and rapid transmission. The researchers knew they'd created something catastrophic. One of them, Dr. Clive, quit and tipped off animal rights activists to shut down the project. But the activists didn't understand what they were releasing. They thought they were saving tortured animals. Before we go any further, I have just released my merch store with a very exclusive limited edition early supporter bundle. Only the first 50 people will have access to this bundle, so get it quickly while you still can at hownottodie.store. Okay, back to the video. They actually opened Pandora's box with a biohazard inside, so they tried to stop it before release, which means someone else wanted it released. But who benefits from unleashing a rage virus? That question drives everything that happens next, because the virus didn't just escape, it evolved. The engineered origin matters because it explains why the virus is so efficient. Natural pathogens evolved to keep hosts alive long enough to spread. Killing your host too quickly limits transmission opportunities. The Rage virus was designed in a lab where efficiency was the goal, and it shows. The 10 to 20 second infection time is faster than any natural virus on record. The behavioral override is total, ensuring maximum aggression for maximum spread. The hemorrhaging creates endless transmission opportunities through blood and fluids. It's a worst-case scenario virus that couldn't exist in nature because evolution would never favor something this deadly. But human engineering doesn't care about evolutionary balance. But efficiency in spreading isn't the same as efficiency in killing. And that's the final piece that explains why you wouldn't survive. Because the virus isn't trying to kill you, it's trying to replace you. We built a virus that treats people like gasoline and aggression like fire, and then we accidentally lit the match. The 28 days later, comics expanded the outbreak beyond Britain, showing how infected spread to mainland Europe through carriers on boats. One storyline follows a military group trying to weaponize the virus, modify it for controlled deployment against enemy populations. They fail spectacularly because you can't control rage once it starts spreading. Another arc shows infected adapting to their environment, learning to hunt in coordinated packs, showing rudimentary problem solving when attacking fortified positions. The comics confirmed what the films hinted at. The virus doesn't stay static, it evolves, and each evolution makes survival harder. But adaptation is just evolution responding to pressure. The real question is, what was pressuring the virus to evolve? And the answer appears 28 years later in a form nobody expected: evolution of the infected. But nothing prepared fans for what 28 years later revealed. The newest film jumps decades forward to show Britain still infected, still quarantined, still a death zone despite international containment efforts. And the virus has evolved into multiple distinct variants. The baseline infected are still there, fast and vicious as ever. But now there are slow lows, infected who move at reduced speed and show self-preservation instincts, eating corpses and avoiding obvious danger while still attacking when opportunity strikes. Then there are alphas, infected with partial cognitive function who lead hordes, coordinate ambushes, and show genuine strategic thinking. One scene has an alpha directing other infected to flank survivors, pointing and grunting orders like a rabid general commanding a flesh army. The variant evolution changes everything because it means the infected aren't just mindless monsters anymore. Slow lows survive longer by conserving energy and avoiding suicidal charges, making them persistent threats in areas you thought were clear. But slow lows are just the warm-up. What comes next is where the virus stops being a plague and starts becoming an invasive species with its own ecosystem. And at the top of that ecosystem is something that should be impossible. Alphas turn hordes from scattered mobs into organized hunting parties with rudimentary tactics. You can't just outsmart base infected by hiding in a second-story building. Alphas will send scouts to flush you out while positioning the horde to cut off escape routes. They learn, they adapt, they remember patterns. And that means every survival trick you know from zombie media stops working because these things are evolving faster than you can adjust. So, infected went from mindless rage monsters to tactical predators with command structure in 28 years. But viruses don't evolve intelligence without evolutionary pressure, which raises the terrifying question: what was hunting the infected that forced them to get smarter? Why every survival strategy fails? The biological reality makes it impossible to wait out. Traditional zombies decay over time, rotting until they can't function. Rage-infected are alive. Their bodies follow normal human biology, minus the psychological breaks. They need food and water to survive, but they'll cannibalize corpses and drink from puddles. They starve eventually, but slowly, over weeks or months, depending on available resources. And the evolved variants like slow lows have extended survival times because they eat strategically instead of burning all their energy on non-stop sprinting. You can't bunker down and wait for them to rot away. They'll still be hunting when your supplies run out, which brings us back to the carrier problem. If carriers can spread the virus without symptoms, and alphas can coordinate attacks, what happens when an alpha becomes a carrier? Hold that thought, because the answer is already happening in the newest film. Combat is suicide. Combat is a losing game from every angle. Infected feel no fear, no pain, no hesitation. They don't stop when shot unless you hit the brain or spine. Body shots just make them angrier. They don't retreat when wounded. A legless infected will drag itself toward you with its arms, still trying to bite, still trying to spread the virus. And they're fast enough to close distance before most people can line up a clean headshot. You might take down one or two, but hordes travel in dozens or hundreds. You'll run out of ammunition before they run out of bodies, and every second you spend fighting is another chance for infected blood to splash into your mouth or eyes. One drop ends you. One mistake turns you into another screaming sprinter tearing through survivor camps. But fighting isn't the worst option. What I'm about to tell you is why running and hiding are even deadlier. And it all comes down to what the virus does to your social instincts. The psychological warfare. The psychological warfare is just as brutal. These aren't rotting corpses. They're your neighbors, your family, your friends, wearing familiar faces twisted into masks of rage. 28 days later forces the main character Jim to watch an infected child attack him. 28 weeks later shows a father becoming infected and immediately hunting his own children with the same viciousness he'd show a stranger. The virus doesn't discriminate. It doesn't spare loved ones or recognize family bonds. Your infected spouse will tear your throat out without hesitation. Your infected child will attack you with the same rage as any other infected, and you'll have to kill them to survive. That mental toll breaks people faster than physical danger. How many survivors can shoot their own family members before they'd rather join the infected? But emotional attachment isn't just a weakness during infection. It's a weakness before infection, too. And the virus exploits that weakness in ways that make survival alone the only option while simultaneously making survival alone psychologically impossible. Fire works, but it's a strategic nightmare. Infected burn like everything else, but they don't stop attacking while they're on fire. They become running torches that spread flames to everything they touch, including you, setting a building on fire to clear infected risks, trapping yourself in the blaze. Molotov cocktails work in movies because directors need cool action shots. In reality, you're creating mobile fire hazards that might run into your only escape route while screaming, and fire draws attention. Every infected within earshot will charge toward the light and noise, turning your tactical advantage into a beacon that summons reinforcements. You might kill 20 infected with fire and attract 200 more in the process. Stealth is your only real option, and it's barely viable. Infected hunt by sight and sound primarily, though some evidence suggests they can smell blood. Moving silently in complete darkness gives you the best odds, but darkness also means you can't see threats until they're on top of you. Cities are death traps, because there's nowhere to move without making noise. Broken glass, fallen debris, abandoned cars with active alarms. One wrong step, and every infected in 3 blocks knows your location. Rural areas are better, but not safe. Fields offer no cover. Forests limit visibility. And you still need supplies, which means entering buildings where infected might be sleeping off their last meal. The environmental decay works against you constantly. 28 days later showed a Britain falling apart after 1 month. Traffic jams become permanent obstacles. Power grids fail within weeks. Running water stops when no one maintains treatment plants. Hospitals are infection zones packed with initial victims. Grocery stores get stripped bare by panicking survivors or become feeding grounds for infected hordes. Every resource you need for long-term survival is in a location where infected gather. You can't grow crops safely because fields are exposed. You can't hunt game because gunshots attract infected from miles away. You can't fish coastal waters because ports are urban zones, aka infected central. Starvation becomes as dangerous as the virus itself. The false hope of safe zones. Safe zones are temporary at best, death traps at worst. The District 1 collapse in 28 weeks later proved that no amount of military hardware stops the virus once it gets inside your perimeter. One carrier infects one person who infects a dozen more before lockdown protocols activate. By then, it's too late. The infected are inside the walls, turning safe zones into massacre sites. Soldiers can't shoot fast enough when infected move at sprint speed and attack from every direction simultaneously. But military failure raises another question. If trained soldiers with automatic weapons can't stop infected, what could? The answer exists, but using it means accepting something worse than the infected themselves. Gas attacks and firebombing become the only options, and those kill survivors just as dead as infected. The military response in 28 weeks later was Code Red extermination. Shoot everything that moves and burn the district to the ground. They still failed to contain it. Island survival seems logical until you remember Britain is an island, and it didn't help them one bit. The virus spread from Cambridge to London to the entire island in under a month despite being surrounded by ocean. Infected can't cross water easily, but carriers can. And carriers don't know they're carriers until they've already spread the virus to everyone on your boat or island community. One asymptomatic refugee joins your island paradise, and you're back to square one, fighting a new outbreak with limited space to retreat. Islands also mean limited resources. No trade routes, no supply runs to the mainland, no escape if things go wrong. You're trapped with the infected in a confined space where eventually you run out of places to hide. The time pressure destroys long-term planning. Other zombie outbreaks let you establish routines. Clear a building, fortify it, set up rainwater collection, plant a garden, settle in for the long haul. The rage virus makes every location temporary because infected don't stop searching. They'll circle your building every day, testing for weaknesses, attacking anything that looks like entry. You can't make noise during the day or night. You can't light fires that produce visible smoke. You can't generate power that creates humming sounds. Any sign of life draws investigation, and infected have time to investigate because they're not decaying. You'll spend every hour in silent darkness, never fully sleeping, always listening for footsteps and screams. That's not survival. That's slow-motion psychological torture until you make a mistake. The infection time eliminates heroic rescue scenarios. Movies love the moment where someone gets bitten and spends their last hours saying goodbye, preparing their friends to kill them when they turn. The rage virus gives you 20 seconds. No goodbyes. No meaningful last words. You get exposed, and you're gone before anyone processes what happened. Your friends watch you transform in real time from ally to enemy. There's no tragic buildup, just instant horror. And it means every close call is potentially fatal. Cutting it too close in a fight, taking one hit you couldn't avoid, tripping over rubble and landing in infected blood. Any of those scenarios ends your story immediately. You don't get dramatic death scenes. You get 20 seconds of agony followed by becoming the monster you were running from. Research for a cure is functionally impossible during an active outbreak. The comics showed military scientists trying to study the virus in contained environments. Every experiment either failed or made things worse. One story arc had them trying to engineer a vaccine using carrier blood. The test subjects either died from immune rejection or became infected themselves when the virus mutated around their genetic resistance. Creating a cure requires stable laboratory conditions. Uninfected test subjects years of trials and refinement. None of that exists when infected are pounding on your doors and supply lines have collapsed. Any cure development would take decades in perfect conditions. You don't have decades. You have maybe weeks before your current hideout becomes compromised. The carrier mutation rate is unknown, which makes genetic resistance unreliable. Maybe 1 in 1,000 people become carriers instead of turning. Maybe 1 in 1,000,000. The films and comics don't give hard numbers because the virus is too new and research too incomplete. You can't bank on being the lucky one with natural immunity. And even if you are a carrier, you're now a plague rat everyone should avoid. Other survivors will kill you on sight if they figure out what you are because you're too dangerous to keep alive. You become a walking bioweapon with no faction to call home. Too dangerous for survivors and too human for infected to ignore. Being immune doesn't save you. It makes you a different kind of target. The infected life cycle creates a false hope trap. They starve after 9 weeks without food, so theoretically you could hide that long and emerge when they've all died off, but evolved variants like slow lows break that timeline by eating corpses and conserving energy. And 9 weeks is a long time to maintain perfect stealth in a world without infrastructure. No power means no refrigeration for food. No water treatment means dysentery from drinking contaminated sources. No medical supplies means any injury or illness could kill you. You're betting you can outlast the infected while also maintaining your health with zero support systems. Most people can't go 9 days without making a critical mistake, let alone 9 weeks. But starvation isn't what kills most survivors. What kills them is the answer to that earlier question about isolation. Because the longer you survive alone, the more the virus wins. Not by infecting you, but by making you into something that can't rebuild civilization even if you survive. The global response. The global response would be containment through annihilation. Britain got quarantined immediately, enforced by international naval blockades shooting anything that tried to leave territorial waters. Other nations wouldn't risk infection spreading to their populations. They'd glass Britain from orbit if they had to. So, the rest of the world gave up on Britain, which means if you're inside the quarantine zone, you're not waiting for rescue. You're waiting for something else entirely. And what they're waiting for is revealed in the time pressure. Any outbreak in another country would trigger the same response. Infected zones would be isolated, firebombed, and written off as loss. Survivors inside quarantine zones wouldn't be rescued. They'd be acceptable casualties in protecting the rest of humanity. You're not getting saved. You're getting buried with everyone else to make sure the virus stays contained. The societal collapse is instant and total. Britain had 28 days before functional government ceased to exist. Most estimates suggest modern society runs out of food in 3 days if supply chains break. Power plants shut down in days without operators. Hospitals become infection vectors in hours. Military discipline breaks down when soldiers watch their families turn. Police abandon their posts to protect their own. What's left are scattered survivors with no coordination, no leadership, no shared plan. You're not rebuilding civilization. You're watching it burn in real time while trying not to burn with it. Every survival strategy relies on other people, and other people are the liability. You need groups to share watch duties, scavenge efficiently, maintain morale, but every person is a potential carrier. Every new face could be the infection vector that kills your entire group. You can't vet people medically without lab equipment that doesn't exist. You can't quarantine newcomers for weeks because you don't have the space or resources. And you can't turn away everyone because isolation drives people insane. You're forced to choose between the slow death of loneliness or the fast death of trusting the wrong person. Both options kill you eventually, which finally brings us back to that original question. Why did scientists create a virus that spreads in 20 seconds, evolves variants, creates carriers, and makes human connection fatal? The answer isn't that they wanted to create a weapon. They wanted to cure human rage. And what they actually created was proof that rage is the only thing keeping humanity alive. The infected adapt to countermeasures constantly. Early survivors learned to use noise as a distraction, throwing rocks to redirect hordes away from hideouts. Alphas learned to ignore obvious distractions and investigate the source instead. Survivors tried barricading with heavy furniture. Infected learned to work together, pushing obstacles aside through coordinated effort. Every tactic that works once gets adapted against, and infected don't need to sleep much. They can spend all night testing your defenses while you need to sleep eventually. They have the numbers, they have the time, they have the tireless aggression, you have fatigue, limited ammunition, and the creeping knowledge that you can't win this fight. And remember that question about why scientists made it spread so fast? Here's the answer they discovered too late. They weren't creating a weapon or a cure, they were creating evolution's next attempt at humanity. One that doesn't need civilization, doesn't need compassion, doesn't need anything except rage. And rage always wins, because rage never stops. So why wouldn't you survive the rage virus? Because it was engineered to be unsurvivable. It turns people into weapons in 20 seconds, spreads through any contact with infected fluids, creates carriers who can't be identified. evolves into smarter variants faster than you can adapt. The virus attacks every survival strategy simultaneously. Biological and psychological warfare wrapped in a package that looks like your neighbor's until it's tearing your throat out. You wouldn't survive because survival requires time, resources, and hope. The rage virus gives you none of those things. It gives you 20 seconds of pain, and then it gives you rage. And once you've got rage, you're not you anymore. You're just another reason someone else won't survive either. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every which TV show zombie apocalypse is the deadliest, click on the video on the screen. Video on the screen. Video on the screen. Video on the screen.